Hey, this is Loral, and welcome back to Loral's Real Money Talks, a podcast on how to make money, how to keep it, how to invest it, and how to use your team. It's the Millionaire Matrix. So our goal through the podcast is to have interviews and conversations about money. Listen in.
Good morning, Reno. It is Mike Bosma, your business savvy CPA, coming to you from the KOH studio. Hey, you garden show listeners, you want to hang tight and hang on. You've made these investments into your garden. Let's talk about saving a buck or two. Hey, we call it a little Benjis, little greenbacks, maybe some cabbage to go in your wallet. That is the emphasis on the show today. Of course, each and every Saturday, we bring to you 60 minutes of action-packed business adventure called Bosma on Business. Now, I've got a international, renowned, spectacular guest on today's show. Her name is Loral Langmeyer. She's a best-selling author, and probably her biggest claim to fame is the fact that she's a dance mom and part of the dance family. But Loral, welcome to Bosma on Business.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Super excited to be here. I can't even believe you brought up the dance mom part. I don't think you know, but it's okay.
It's called a hook. It's called a hook. Well, he's like, what is this dance mom thing? So the way we start the show out, we say, give us your elevator pitch. Hey, if we were in an elevator riding up to the 43rd floor, and I said, so what's your business? What would you say?
I teach people. I wrote The Millionaire Maker, so that's what I do. That's my claim to fame, 3 to 5 year millionaire status. Can do it in 3 to 5 years for those of you who want to go fast. Slow doesn't work. And I teach people how to make money, which is the biggest part of getting that millionaire status happening fast, is you got to make money, and that doesn't include a job.
So you make millionaires. So like the show before this, the garden show, some people plant seeds. You plant certain types of seeds that grow like money trees. So
you are correct.
So how'd you get into this business?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska and didn't grow up with any money conversation. So at 17, I went to an event. I don't actually remember the event, but I got the book Think and Grow Rich and consumed it. And I was like, how come nobody in my 17 years of living so far has had any conversation that looks, sounds, or breathes anything like what this book's reading? So I just started studying millionaires and why so few people become millionaires. Then just continue to just dive into that. And what does it really take? Fast forward 2000. Well, actually, I'll give another couple of little creds along the way. 1996, my prior life was an exercise physiologist. I was designing fitness centers in blue-collar environments. So specifically, I built 272 fitness centers on offshore oil rigs for Chevron. And I was just over that life. I was in San Francisco working in headquarters, traveling around the world. And I really wanted to get back to this money conversation. And I had met through Bob Proctor, Robert Kiyosaki, and Sharon Lechter. So I just jumped totally out of a very high six-figure job into following Robert around, which nobody knew who he was then. And I was teased. I said, you're going to follow a Japanese guy in a game around? And I became the master distributor of a cash flow game. So that was 96 to 2000. 1999, became a millionaire as a single mom. I want to be a mom. He didn't want to be a dad. Pretty easy choice. So I had my son, Logan. And that's when I got really serious, Mike. I said, oh my gosh, I was living in Sausalito in a beautiful waterfront property. And my mom in Nebraska was like, oh my God, you're going to have to come home. We're going to have to help you. I said, oh no, I'm just going to make way more money. And that's what I did. So in 6 months, became a millionaire. So June 1999 was my millionaire year in real estate and gas and oil. And then I launched on my own. So 2000, 2001, left them, high-fived the Kiyosaki Rich Dad, Poor Dad team and said, thank you for all the learning. And I started. So in 2006, I wrote my Millionaire Maker book. Actually, McGraw-Hill called me and said, would you write about how you do this? Susie Orman talks about how to stay broke. We'd like you to talk about how to get rich. And I said,
right.
I just let people follow me around. I charge them a little bit of money, and they follow me around, and voila, I know how to make real estate millionaires. And they said, well, figure out how you do it. I'm like, oh. So again, got a mentor. I actually went back to Sharon Lechter, and I said, how do you document what you do to people? Right? Because that's actually a big thing. I think people do things, but to teach people how to do things is another level. So we spent 2005 documenting how I made millionaires, and I shouldn't say the rest is history because we've been millionaires now in many categories. Creating that in the in the marijuana space, cannabis space here in Nevada. Obviously, digital currency is a big one. Lots of different asset classes. So it's just expanded from them. I love teaching people how to make money and love helping them, see the path.
Sure. Well, and that's where, as I mentioned on the phone, Loral Langmeyer, the author of The Millionaire Maker. And, one of the things that is fascinating, you said, you read Think and Grow Rich. I back not too shortly after that read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and was introduced to that genre. And I remember it was the first time reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was like, oh, really? The equation, as an accountant, this resonated with me. The equation to get rich is to spend less than you make over time. Right? As long as what you make is less than what you spend, you're going to accumulate wealth. You, of course, put a little gas on that fire and accelerate it. And I remember it actually was funny is how close our paths were to crossing in that moment. Now, I was a little bit, I think when I got involved with the Kiyosaki group was after you left in 2001. But a good friend of mine, Garrett Sutton. Do you know Garrett?
Oh, I know Garrett. I love Garrett.
Right. So Garrett, and I were actually in business together. He and I co-founded a bookkeeping company as he was going around with Robert, and he wrote Own Your Own Corporation, Own Your Own LLC, How to Buy and Sell a Business. I had numerous credits in those books, kind of on the tax technical part of it, and we had this great partnership where he wouldn't give tax advice, I wouldn't give legal advice, but we would, do these consultations, and really got to a place where, instead of the listeners of this show, we give an hour or two. We couldn't do that back in that day. We could basically give 15 minutes, and then we started having to charge for the 15 minutes because we were booked morning, noon, and night, 24/7, with people saying, hey, help, how does this work? Help us, help us, help us. And so it was actually at that time, the firm I was with, Grant Thornton, we did a proposal to Kiyosaki's organization. I got National to buy into being their premier CPA firm, helping people go along this path. And so it was a great run, and it sounds like that you had a similar great run. And what was, I'm just curious, because
was that after Diane Kennedy? Because Diane Kennedy was in my era.
Yeah, it was after Diane Kennedy, correct.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about that is when, you're in the moment, back, in this, kind of 1996 to 1999, 2001 timeframe. Not everybody knew who Robert Kiyosaki was, but he was, getting his book was getting a lot of traction and was changing how people think. And so, it's one of those things you decided, hey, I'm going to hitch my wagon to that horse. And what I just had to imagine, you left a six-figure job. What was the fear, trepidation, kind of jumping off the deep end here? I mean, or was it?
Well, here's what's interesting is I went to college on a basketball scholarship, academic scholarship, but it wasn't quite enough because I was at a really expensive private school. So you either had to get a job to supplement, because my family, we're farmers, right? I didn't have the money to put us through school. Or, you figure it out. So my brother, older, he got a job. And I was like, a job? And I kind of watched him go back and forth. I think I had a job for a minute. And I said, this is ridiculous, because I lived in the gym. So I remember, I'll never forget that day too. So I have one of my best-selling books is called Yes Energy. So you say yes and figure it out. So it's kind of my whole attitude about life. So I remember at 17, 18, where I needed some supplemental college money, and I was at the gym, and I asked the guy, the owner, I said, what are the people doing? They're like following people around. He said, oh, that's called personal training. This is in 1983 and 4. Like long time ago. Now I just told you how old I am. So, which I really don't care. And I said, so how much money do they make? And he's like $40 an hour. I'm like, shit, I'm a personal trainer. Like, ding, that day, I just started, put a little flyer together, and I started getting clients. So soon after, I had to get my basketball team. So I had 16 after 1 year. I had 16 people working for me. I had booked so much business. So making money, it just was common sense. It's like, well, if I can't do it, I'm going to hire somebody else to do it. And I screwed a whole bunch of stuff up. Pricing, paid them too much, didn't get taxes done right. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was making money because I knew that's what I needed to do. So fast forward, when I left Chevron, I just reenacted my training business. And I started getting some other smaller clients where I knew I could keep enough cash flow going that I could make it. And I jumped. And then when I got into the cash flow game, as I could still poll people. Mike, we could do a national poll today, given that you know that brand so well as well, is they would say, now what, right? It's the number one comment after you play that game. Well, now what? How do we do it? So now that we're sharing fun Kiyosaki stories, I was the first cash flow coaches company in 1997 and 8. So we did all the coaching. and again, just kind of made up from the game. And that was mine. So that's where I had a side, 100% of that was mine, no royalty back. And I started financial and business strategy coaching on the cash flow game. And because real estate was my thing, I just kept it real estate centric. And then obviously they went to Utah and, Russ Whitney and all those guys took all that over at a bigger scale. But yeah, when I jumped, it was scary. So I really had buttoned down my expenses. I, ramped up my cash flow. And that's what I teach people. I just think that moment right there, that moment is probably the scariest moment for people to transition. It's jumping from that certainty of every 2 weeks you get something, ACH to your bank account or somehow, deposited. Most people don't even know how that happens. They just happen to have money. So the consciousness that you have to come about to say, I'm going to get up every day and intentionally drive cash flow for my family and I is a very different psychology.
Right.
And it's a very different energy and it's a very different activity. So I teach a lot of that moment of don't leave yet. So I teach that transitional lead to, what you have to do. You have to focus on cash flow and it's not just going to come into your bank account magically. You have to say, Mike, I need your credit card.
Right.
And I'm going to provide a great value to you, product or service, whatever that is. And so I'm not any vertical market centric, like, clearly an expert in author speaker like this space and clearly a real estate expert, but I don't go that way. I say, I'm just going to teach you how to transition to make money. And even if it's what I call the 21st century lemonade stand, like right now, if you and your family need to make an extra $500 to $1,000, how would you do that? How would you make an extra $2,000? And I'm very family centric. We've met, I've been a single mom with my kids for most of my parenting years. The last 5 years, I got married to my amazing Canadian husband, but other than that, I've been figuring this out. So I do tend to attract a lot of single parents, men and women, to say, how do you do it? How do you get help? There's a technique to hiring the right people to help you through all this.
Well, you're right.
You cannot do it alone.
Yeah,
oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it takes a village, right? I think that's where, as we talking about on the phone, Loral Langmeyer, best-selling author, millionaire maker, Yes Energy, talking about how to take that mindset of, hey, I'm getting my W-2, my check every payday, to, well, what happens when that doesn't come? And when we come back, let's talk about that transition going from business worker to business owner and how to maybe do that, put your big toe in the water, doing it part-time so that it's not really falling off the cliff. When we come back, we call it Bosma on Business. News Talk 780 KOH. Welcome back to Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma, on the phone. Loral Langmeyer, best-selling author. She wrote Millionaire Maker, Yes Energy, and a host of others. Talking about that journey where she was getting the six-figure income back in the day and said, I'm going to go be a master licensee for the cash flow quadrant game for Kiyosaki and his organization, and created a coaching network or framework around that, because you're right. After you get them playing the game, you're like, okay, well, that was interesting. Now what? What do we do? I take this knowledge and you start to see how I start to accumulate a wealth. I then invest it. If I invested in my own business, then I'm really investing in me, and I can put as much me into that business as I want to create even more wealth, and wealth begets wealth begets wealth. But, oftentimes for people, and I can say firsthand, when I started, Keystone CPAs, January of this year, really was looking to become a full-time business broker. And the firm that I was retiring from was exiting this market and said, hey, how about if you just buy this back from us? And if I have a fully functioning CPA firm behind me, that's going to help me do my business broker thing more effectively. And what you said, Loral, in the last segment, which I would say is genius, is just, start with yes, and then figure out how to get yes done. And I think just so many times people overanalyze. And now sometimes, us yes people, the people that know us well, they say, you are so busy. And I'm like, yeah, and that's true. But we got to choose what we're busy on. And if you see an opportunity, as I was telling one of the team back at Keystone CPAs just yesterday, the best time to follow up with people about getting their work, winning their work, is in busy season. Like, everybody's busy, including their current CPA who's not calling them back. If you say, hey, you want me to file an extension for it? Can I help you? And it takes a minute. It just takes a minute. Yeah. And it's amazing what kind of favor you will garner by just being mindful about what people's plight, the spot they're in, and say, let me help you out a little bit. They're like, well, I keep calling my CPA and he won't even return my phone call. And he gets paid to do it. You're doing it for free. And one easy way to differentiate yourself. But as you were saying on this last segment, hey, maybe we don't want to do the full Monty. We just want to put our big toe in the water. How do you coach people to get their mind around this is how entrepreneurship works and find a way for them forward? How do you do that?
Well, so I'm going to just layer in another thing. So I was also in the movie The Secret, which you haven't watched that. It's out on Netflix now, which is super fun. And I'll just give a note to anyone out there that's being asked to do these multi-author or multi-production videos. I say yes to all of them. I bet I have 100 of those, Mike, in the can. And one hit, like big. I mean, some of them hit kind of moderately, but The Secret hit huge. And it still hugely affects our brand and what we do. So I mention that because I don't do mindset coaching. I have like 2 seconds for that. Even though I've got a lot of training in that, here's what I do that's different. I'm going to get you to make money as fast as you can. So I create a marketplace I do every 3 weeks. I put in a marketplace. In fact, we're starting one this Thursday. It's 2 days, and you will make money. I don't care what you sell. You don't have anything to sell. You're perfected, and you're already making 7 figures. I'll help you make another 6 in that category. So here's what we do. It's super simple. What do you already know? It's already between your head. I know how many people say, because I have another book coming out. So we'll talk about that in 2022 when it comes out with McGraw-Hill, How to Make Your Kids Millionaires. Because my kids documented on paper were millionaires at 10. Now, do they know? My son's 21. He's growing into it. But how do you do it as a parent? It's really a parenting book. And making money and having money be a conversation in a healthy way in the family is a huge piece of this. But, people say, how do you write so many books? I said, I just download it. It's in my brain. A book is your brain on paper. So, and the more you download, the more you're going to get. You just keep coming up with ideas. But most people don't download their first book, so there's no room for a second book. So I'm a huge, get a book out. Like you already know something. Like I'm working with a ton of teachers who cannot stand this process room of being a teacher, would like to actually be a real teacher. I said, you know what? There's no regulation. You can't be a tutor. So start a tutoring company and do what you really have all wanted to do in the classroom and do it on your own. And they're making between, on the low end, 25 to 75 an hour, depending on what they're doing. If you're in any kind of digital or social media, like a lot of our stage presenters, right? The woman who put me on stages, March 7th last year, 2020, I came home to 29 stages being canceled. And I remember Linda looking at me going, oh my gosh, well, I need to now become a client. How do I do this? And I said, well, what do you know how to do? You know how to organize stuff. So she picked lawyers for whatever reason, and she organizes all their events on Zoom. All her law firms have all over doubled in their capacity because they went immediately to online law practice. So it's whatever you know how to do. How do you convert it to today's environment? Immediately. If you can help somebody with social media. I have teenagers. I let kids come free. That's our charity. I have teenagers who know how to use this lovely thing called the phone more than you do.
Right.
I have this one kid. He's so cute. Here's his gig. He charges $20 a month, and you can ask up to 5 phone call questions about how to use your phone. And so everybody uses them in the beginning. And so, but now, it's a year later, and I don't know, I think he's maybe got 10, 15 clients. So for easy math, let's use 10. Well, that's $200 a month. To a 15-year-old kid, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, right?
Woohoo. But he called me and he said, so Loral, should I give people their money back? They don't use it all. I said, no, you just remind them, send them all a text and say, hey, you have X number of hours left with me. He said, but they still don't use me. I said, well, that's called business. He's like, I love business. So then he goes out and gets more clients. Right. And he gets more clients and more clients. So we're not talking about rocket science, new inventions. We're talking about, I have 2 women who have just started bookkeeping businesses. So, in my mind, I'm thinking, I should have them work with you and your structure. But they're really good spreadsheets. They're QuickBooks trained, but they've never put on the hat. And I said, and they're not certified. And I said, yeah, but people just have big boxes full of receipts, and be the box organizer. Be that person that can send the whole box to, and you organize it. You put bank statements in order and receipts in order. They're like, you're kidding. People will pay for that? I said, all day long.
All day long.
You know how to do PowerPoint? Right. I said, so I take the easy stuff and just prove to you as fast as I can how I can help you make money. Click. Then we'll get more sophisticated. But to break that first barrier of, I can't sell, I'm an employee, oh my gosh. You can sell anything if you're providing value. And people buy stuff. They're going to buy other people's stuff if you don't offer it. Well, I have a whole system that I call a marketplace, and I teach people how to make money very quickly.
Right. Well, and I guess the question there, I think the obvious question is, how do you charge for your services? How do you get paid?
So I get paid on either an event or in a coaching or mentoring package. So I have an ongoing mentoring mastermind. It's called The Big Table. It got that funny little name called the Big Table because I grew up in Nebraska where huge farm family, most little kids sat at the little tables or on the floor or card tables, and there was a big table. At 7 years old, I went to the big table and I sat by my aunt because there were no chairs available. And there was been a joke in my family of sitting at the big table and just always deciding, the next conversation. So I used it as a metaphor. If you want to be at the big table and be a millionaire with money, you just got to take a seat and say, I want to be there. I have no idea how to be there. And that's where we pick up our, I shouldn't say tagline, but our process is we'll meet you where you are. So I don't care if you're divorced, you got debt all over the place, you've got a disaster, you're going through a divorce, you're going through a marriage. I mean,
yeah,
people don't realize everything they do touches money.
Right.
I mean, where you live, how you spend your food money, like every day just to be on the planet, you are interacting with 10 to 20 different financial decisions, either consciously or unconsciously. So a lot of what I do in the beginning is just make people aware and start learning, like when you use your debit card, what does that do? What does your credit card do? Like I go from the basics to working with multimillionaires selling, 8 and 9 figure businesses. So I have a huge range, but I have a huge team. So our event, that marketplace event, I start using $97. Super simple, 2 days, 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 2 days, and you will make money.
Okay.
If you don't, you can come again.
Right.
Because,
do it again.
Sometimes you're so stuck in your behavior, it takes a little time to prod you along and say you can do this.
You definitely have to rewire the brain. So let's do this when we come back. Let's talk about that process, some of the obstacles to going out on your own, and maybe some anecdotes about people that have profited from your wise counsel. I've got Lauren Langmeyer on the phone. We call it Bosma on Business. News X 780 KOH. On the phone, I've got Loral Langmeyer, who international best-selling author, and we'll call her wealth diva. In the span of a minute, find a way for you to make $1 or $2. And as Laura was talking on the last segment, it occurred to me that many times as people put that big toe in the water and start looking at different ways to make $1 or $2, and she's got some seminars coming up to be able to do that, that sometimes you just need to try it. And what is true, especially in this COVID season we're at, as people are thinking about opening up again, I would encourage you, if you've been sequestered for the last year, all you've done is look at your, through the window of your daughter's bedroom where you're officing, it's going to be uncomfortable. And I think just embrace the uncomfort. And it's funny, like I went to an event where as we get a little bit more experience, we usually go to events where we know everybody. When I was in an event, I didn't know anybody. And I remember I just sit there kind of a wallflower and, my beautiful wife Jill's like, "Are you okay?" Well, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just kind of taking in, the uncomfortableness of this moment, right? But I'll acclimate to it. I will. I always do. I just know I do. I just let me settle for a minute, and then I'm like, okay, let me go start working the crowd and just start talking to people. I just need a minute to let this newness and the uncomfortableness of this newness wear off. And I think when you talk about going in an audience and, hey, let's find something to sell, and let's ask people to sell it, or to buy whatever you're selling, I'd imagine that those people are wanting to crawl out of their skin. So on the phone, I mentioned Loral Langmeyer. So how do you manage that? How do you manage that uncomfortableness?
Well, I like your strategy. It's mine as well. I stand back and I take it in, and then I merge into it. So I don't go just, shift the culture, because I do know how to do that. I mean, when I'm I'd say hired or contracted to go on a stage, I control the room from the minute I walk in to the minute I'm off that stage. So I always get there before, and I assess the energy, I assess the crowd, I assess the conversation. The level of the conversation is really important with what I'm doing, because I'm with a bunch of beginners that are jumping, which what I love about COVID is they didn't get to jump. They were just put off the pasture, which, was perfect, because now they come to me and I teach them to be a great entrepreneur. So I think there's a lot in training people about that jump. And I love the transition of a jump, whether it's, merging into an audience or more like you said, merging into a meeting or a room. And then the biggest thing I teach is what I call a very directive agenda. Is a lot of times people don't have an agenda, right? Especially, I love being a woman teaching this in the space, because as a woman, I can pick on women. Here's a number one woman closing sales line. Let me know if you are interested in what I do. Let me know if I can help you. Maybe we collaborate. No, I don't need girlfriends. I want business partners, and I want clients, and I'm really clear with my directive agenda. So whenever you go into a room or go into an environment or go into a opportunity, you say, I'm going to move from employee to entrepreneur, you've got to be really clear to direct that agenda. Like, what are you going to do? And what is the outcome of every interaction? I mean, I sit down on an airplane. and I'll make money on the flight all the time. My husband got a joke. He said, you should just fly around, in first class, or I just sold my plane out of private plane for about 15 years. And I would get clients everywhere I would go, just depending on the conversation and how I emerge into that conversation. So I think it's a principle in life on how you just interact and there's times also when you just stand back and say, I'm not going to. And that's a choice.
Right.
This isn't the place or the time, and you just stand back.
Right. And
watch us. I mean, we've known each other a little bit, Mike.
Yep.
We do the same thing. I watch both of us. We do the exact same thing. I should say similar in our own way. So I think for the people listening, it's what do you really want? And, it's so interesting in this COVID time for people to complain and whine about what they don't want. One of the first questions I have for everyone listening is, what do you want? Because right now you have an opportunity. It is the most volatile market, which makes it the most richest market. I have never been so, I hate the word busy, but active in engagements. One of my clients last summer brought a Ford dealership in the middle of Texas and said it's going to fall down in COVID. And it's a Ford franchise, the family Ford, not some spinoff.
Right.
And he said, we can buy half of it for $500,000. I said, done. We had that money in no time, and it was 100% debt convertible notes. And he's like, we're going to go into debt to do it. I said, 100%. We're going to get 5 people. We're going to $100,000 each. We're going to pay them 10%. We're going to go buy this thing, fix this thing. We'll buy the rest of it. And then we'll figure out the equity conversion. We're not going to spend our brain power on it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
again, how to emerge,
right.
how to know, and do it. But everybody, here's what I tell everybody right now, Mike. Look around your community. It's if you want to be a shark on the tank, don't watch it. Be one.
Right.
My God, never has the world needed more partnerships and money collaborations, from restaurants to auto body shops to that Ford dealership to coffee shops to hair salons. They need money, they need brains, and they need help.
Well, right. And
so
I think
I'm having the richest experience right now because of it.
Right.
So if you're one of those people, let's go.
Right. Yeah, I think the key there with what you said, I don't want to gloss over it, is, you have to start with what you want. And I think a lot of times people say, I want to retire. And of course now with Zoom calls, and we use Microsoft Teams, I always ask everybody to have their video on, so that when I do the retire, I always do it in air quotes with my fingers, so that people know, because nobody retires. We're living longer, we're healthier. And maybe all that means is I don't have to go to work today. I don't have to go to the office to, either as an employee or even as a proprietor. I have enough wealth off to the side that the checks come every month that I don't need to go out and ply my trade anymore. I've accumulated enough wealth. Now, that wealth creation is a passion of yours, Loral. So explain kind of what that next step is for people to start accumulating wealth.
So after people start again, with this marketplace is where I start everybody, because it's an easy, less than $100 commitment. So it's a big toe in the water. It's a 2-day experience, right? Once you start making money and you start getting, and I have a Millionaire Maker game. So I took one out of, Kiyosaki's handbook and said, well, I love the games and I love the family dynamics of having that game at kitchen tables. So then when you leave, because you don't have that 401k, so most people that are employees have very passive investing strategies, if a strategy at all, right? Here's a strategy for most people that are employed. I'm going to park my money with 401k or financial planner and pray to God it happens. And when you become an entrepreneur, you become much more savvy and educated. And we really intentionally drive that education of what do you really want for your portfolio? Like I always say, and I don't say it lightly, I've been on Shark Tank. I know most of the sharks. I've partnered with many of them. If you really want to do what they're doing, then you got to get in that conversation. So how do you find your way into those investing conversations? How did the 5 people get picked in my community? They were clients of mine because I know them well. I knew they were millionaires. I knew they were accredited. I knew they had 100,000 sitting around waiting for a great opportunity for a Ford dealership. So there's a next step of understanding money at an investing level, not just real estate and stock market. We're talking everything you drive by, somebody owns. And my question to everybody in the beginning is, why don't you own more of it? Why don't you own some of it? And I'm a huge fan of partnering. So you blend your return or, risk and rewards. That's the thriving conversation that has kept my community now. We've been together, our community at that big table, for 20 years. I have 20-year clients. They're not leaving anywhere. Right. Because they've had such a rich experience. And they become the people bringing. They're out looking and saying, hey, right now, like you said, opportunity zones. I love opportunity zones. And I could not wave a flag big enough about that. I don't think it's being talked about enough. But also residential assisted living. Huge right now. Look at these little strip malls. some of these strip malls, and I have a client actually bidding on a local community college again in Texas, and it will get turned into a residential assisted living facility, like an entire campus.
Right.
Think of a college campus. It has everything you need for residential assisted living. Right? It has the cafeteria, has the gym, has the student union. We're just going to convert it. So right now it's all hers. But once she closes and really gets a plan, she's going to need to raise capital. So that's where all of the people listening, active money making and active investing is what creates millionaire. And yeah, there's all the tax piece around it. Cannot emphasize that enough of what you do, Mike. And all of the trust in the insurance. Like, there's all sorts of things around it. But all the listeners need to, and the only thing I speak to is you got to make it, and you have to learn to lead your investing.
Well, yeah, and that's where it's interesting. Most people that I work with, as business owners, they're like, well, my retirement is my business. Well, guess what? You've just invested in one asset, and by gosh or by golly, it better, sell. And the reality is, a significant amount of businesses aren't sold, and they just kind of peter out. And one of the things, if I could leave our listeners with just a thought, is that if you're a business owner out there and you're not fully funding your retirement account every year, because what Loral is talking about is, and not even in a pre-tax IRA, do it, or a retirement account, do it in a Roth. And imagine you could have a 21% tax bracket if you own a business, max tax ever, right? Then when you sell the business, it's zero tax. So let's talk about that. And the number one thing when you're starting your new venture, when we come back, we call it Bosma on Business. Newstalk 780 KOH. Welcome back to Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma, on the phone. Laurel Langmeyer talking about how to make millions. We leave our listeners with the number one thing. Laurel, best-selling author, serial entrepreneur. What's the big aha, the big takeaway, the thing that if people didn't listen to anything on this show, the one thing they need to remember to make their millions?
They need to start making money every day, like really make that a conscious thing you wake up to. As we're going to be doing a summer challenge on exactly that technique and that strategy and that thinking. We're not even sure what we're going to call it yet, but I've given the challenge to a bunch of my clients, and every one of them have done a 5-figure month. So I'm like, all right, I got to perfect this and really make it available. But make money every day and start thinking, What am I going to do? Not with your job. How do you do it? How do you be in that action, the right action? So you start getting the right movement. Right.
Well, I'll tell you, I think to follow up on that is the best way to practice entrepreneurship is to do entrepreneurship, right? It's like to get ready. Exactly. You just really need to do it. And I remember there's, the anecdotes are long and involved, but go to Facebook Marketplace and start there. Just find something, that is there that's cheap or almost free that you can resell. Go to Craigslist free. Look in your own garage, for crying out loud. I mean, probably the person that has really inspired me more than anybody else in this genre which is monetizing the junk you have, is the beautiful and talented Jill Bosma, who just basically sold our entire house full of stuff before they demolished it, had thousands in the bank that all went into my Schwab account, and now it's worth even thousands more because we just said, well, hey, we're going to make $1 today. We're not going to throw this in a landfill. We're going to try and be responsible stewards and profited for it. So, I think those are all the little tidbits. If there's a way to make a buck, once you start looking, you will find it. I believe that's absolutely true. Laurel, if somebody wants to reach out to you and tune into this marketplace activity, how would they get in touch with you?
I have a link just for all your listeners. It's Just Met Loral. So it's just like you hear it, but spell my name right. So it's JUSTMETLORAL. So it's justmetloral.com/Bosma, BOSMA. I'll know that you listened on this show and came across to us, and I'm going to give you a free ticket. So
free
critical.
Ticket. All right.
So instead of a $97 ticket for 2, I'll give you a free ticket for 2. Go to justmetloral.com/Bosma and click in. And I have a ton of gifts there. I have some free books there. I have my kids' education, Don't Ever Pay Your Kids an Allowance. I have a money rules conversation. So I have a whole bunch of free conversations that will pick up from where we left off. And we will know you came from here, and we'll get you making money.
All right. No, that's what we do each and every Saturday at 10 is help people make a buck or two or millions, as the case may be. If you need one of those free 1-hour consults, it's 775-786-4900 or mbosma@keystone.cpa. Laurel, what a great content. And it never ceases to amaze me how small this world is. So many things in common, right? Although we didn't know each other back in the day, but like two planes crossing at night, we're still in the same atmosphere. So if there's something that's newsworthy, Loral, if there's something like, hey, news breakout, would love to have you back. You have great energy, great talent. We're very honored to share with on the radio listeners for Bosma on Business. Of course, next week, I've got a real surprise for you. And of course, a little bit more business acumen, business expertise on next week's show. We call it Bosma on Business. News Talk 780, KOH.
This is Loral, and you've been listening to Loral's Real Money Talks, a podcast we release every week. So continue, share a podcast. We are international. You can get us on any of the social channels. Also join us on other social channels. If you have a question, go to askloral.com, AskLoral.com. Ask a question, make a request. And if you really want to have a one-on-one and talk to our team, go to Loral, Loral.club. A bunch of free gifts are there, and you can actually fill out an application to talk to our team. We look forward to serving you.